Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be talking about the Pokemon TCG standard format 3 years ago. This was the time when Chilling Reign was the newest set, and this was Team Up on, I believe. Limitless's database is what I'm going to be looking at, the Play Limitless database. Unfortunately, it's not entirely accurate with all these like this set that it starts with, but this was Team Up on. And so I'm just going to talk about the meta, looking at the top 9 decks because the 10th deck is other, and then the 11th deck is Calyrex Alchemy, which is kind of the same as Shadow Rider Calyrex, and then the 12th deck is Vapstrike Malamar, which I don't like. So let's start and hop into the number one deck, which was Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, focusing around, Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, which had an ability, Underworld Door. Once during your turn, you can attach a Psychic Energy card from your hand to one of your bench Pokemon. If you do, draw 2 cards, and you have the attack Max Geist. This does 10 for 3 colorless and 30 more for each Psychic Energy attached to all your Pokemon. Now, this might sound familiar to some of you because in the set Paradox Drift, there are 2 cards. There was Zadu, and then there was Mewtwo EX, which was it's lightning, but it's essentially psychic. Photon Kinesis, the main attack here, is the same attack essentially as Max Geist, and Zadu's ability Clairvoyant Sense is essentially the same as Shadow Eye Calyrex VMAX's ability. However, this was just so good at this time. People thought this was going to be the best psychic VMAX ever. They were wrong, but it was still really, really powerful with its ability to draw cards and its attack that allowed you to just ramp damage. However, on the first turn of the game, or like second, just really in the early stages of the game, you weren't the most powerful deck because you kind of had to build. You did have Alchemy VMAX, which I mentioned earlier, as it was kind of more of its own deck, more of a focus, but a lot of lists ran a 1-1 line with the attack G-Mask Whisk, which says that discard any amount of energy cards from your Pokemon. It does 60 for each card discarded in this way. And if this sounds familiar, that's the same attack as, is that Chien-Pao EX? I don't remember if it's exactly the same thing as Chien-Pao EX. No, that's just Water Energy, but essentially the same thing. Similar to Raging Bolt EX, things like that. We've seen this a lot. And yeah, it was pretty good. And this is, I mean, it just interesting attacker. You also do have Adornment, which accelerates energy. Also, VMAXs, if you're not familiar with them, they are still in the standard format, but don't see much play. They are 3 prize Pokemon that are essentially stage 1s that evolve from 2 prize Pokemon Vs. And then we also had GXs during this era, and some of you are probably definitely not familiar with these. These were 2 prizes, kind of like Pokemon Vs or EXs. And if you had an evolution, then it would be a 2 prizer, but the pre-evolution would be single prizers. I guess that we'll talk about that later, but it wasn't that big of a deal at this point. And there are tag team GXs, which were 3 prizers that were basics that were just really strong. But the Dene GX, I'll talk about now. This was really good. In my opinion, it's one of the best cards ever. I haven't played the whole Pokemon TCG, but it's really, really good. Its ability Dead Change, you can only use 1 Dead Change each turn, but on play, you discard your hand, draw 6 cards, and there was the item search was like Quick Ball, and that's the main one. And Quick Ball isn't like Nest Ball. It puts the card into your hand, so that means that you can actually trigger Dead Change. So Dead Change is really good. If you played with Squawkabilly EX, you know it's really good, but only turn 1 because it literally doesn't do anything the rest of the game with its ability because it just doesn't work. But this it does it. You can do it every turn. It's really, really good. And you can search it out. It's just so good. Um, yeah, the GX is just a really fun card in my opinion. It does have a GX attack as well. GX attacks, you can only use 1 GX attack per game, kind of like a V-Star Powers. They're all attacks, however. The Denes isn't very good. But Gengar Mimikyu's is really good. You do have Poltergeist, which does 50 for each trainer in your opponent's hand, which is okay. We've actually seen this attack later. It's on Bayonetta EX, and it is a reoccurring attack that we see relatively often. But the big thing here is going to be Horror House GX, which is, I mean, for 1 psychic, it's well, for 2 psychics, you have an additional effect where you can say each player draws still 7 cards in hand, but that's not that useful. But for 1 psychic, and also tag team GXs, I didn't say this, but they have a GX attack that has an effect, but if you have extra energies, you use a secondary effect. But here you just usually attach 1 energy, and then your opponent can't play any cards during the next turn. Essentially, they can't do much of anything unless they're already set up. But usually you want to use this on the first turn or second turn of the game. So if they're like in the perfect position already, then they can just attack you, but that's probably not what's happening. So essentially you get a free turn. You are using up your GX attack, but it was really, really, really good. And yeah, this card was insane. Low HP for a 3-prizer, only 240. I mean, we see 2 prizes higher than that. But yeah, and then you also played Paths to the Peak. Path to the Peak was one of the other game-defining cards. Path to the Peak, if you don't know, Pokemon in play with a rule box have no abilities. Again, we see this in the current standard format with the Iron Thorn GX, but it's not as good because it's in the active and it's a Pokemon. It's a little different, but Path to the Peak was actually bad. I mean, Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX has an ability you want to use, and the Dedenne GX has an ability you want to use, which are both rule box Pokemon. Rule boxes are like multi-prizes essentially, and then you had Marshadow though, which has its ability that essentially just lets you discard this stadium, and it was useful to counter Path to the Peak and counter your own Path to the Peak, and just be in a really good position to deal with stadiums, most notably Path to the Peak, but you could use in other scenarios as well. And then you, of course, had lots of Psychic Energy as you need to accelerate them. We had Professor's Research, Marnie, and Boss's Orders. These are the staple draw supporters. Professor's Research is the classic discard draw 7. Boss's Orders is a gusting effect. You switch in when your opponent's bench to the active. And then Marnie, which is each player shuffles their hand, puts it on the bottom of their deck. You draw 5, your opponent draws 4. So it's somewhat disruptive, and it's also a solid draw. It's just a really solid all-around card. There was also Recess Stamp. It's like N or Iono, but it's one-sided, only affecting your opponent. It's a really good card. It got banned and expanded, so yeah, that kind of shows how good it is. And yeah, I mean, just a really, really solid card here. That, you know, just kind of broken. But in terms of standard format, it wasn't like broken. But anyway, and then we also come to the items: Fog Crystal, Quick Ball, Evolution Incense, Switch, Ordinary Rod, and Air Balloon, which was an item at this time. You know, they're good. There's not too much to say about them though, to be honest. Next up, we come to Eternatus VMAX. Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX was Psychic, but it was weak to Darkness. And Darkness, well, we see a bit of a weakness triangle here. And also Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX was a new deck at the time. But then Eternatus VMAX, pretty simple. It has, well, actually, we're seeing this yet again with the Trapagos with the new stadium. Trapagos EX with the, I don't remember what the stadium's called, like Area Zero Underbelly, something. I don't know. But Eternatus VMAX has its ability Eternal Zone. If all your Pokemon in play are Darkness, you can have up to 8 bench Pokemon. And that's really powerful because it boosts your damage of Dread End, which is 30 for each of your Pokemon in play that's Darkness. And so that means that you can have 9 Darkness Pokemon in play, including your active, and then all of a sudden you're hitting 270 for 2, which is really, really solid. And 340 HP on a 3-prizer. I mean, 340 is the highest HP we've ever seen, so really great stats here. And so then you just use that. You have Crobat V, which is draw till you have 6 cards in play. It's kind of like the Dedenne GX. It's a little worse, but it's good. Then we had Weavile GX, a really fun card that lets you move Darkness Energy around as often as you like. And then we also had some other stuff. Some lists apparently play this Darkrai, which is like damage buff. Galarian Zigzagoon on play. Place a damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Yveltal's just a fun little tech here. Galarian Moltres V accelerates energy to itself, and then you have general Pokemon search. We have Chaotic Swell as well. I mentioned Path to the Peak. That was a really big deal. Eternatus VMAX and Crobat V are crucial to the deck, as well as Galarian Moltres V, Weavile GX. They're also nice, but and important. But Crobat V and Eternatus VMAX, if you can't use those, you're gonna lose more likely than not. So Chaotic Swell here will stop Path to the Peak. It's of course a stadium. You can play it to bump your opponent's stadium, but then whenever a player plays a stadium from their hand, that it can't be Chaotic Swell, I don't believe, because that's how stadiums work. But you play it and then you discard the stadium and play like the new one. It's a little weird, but pretty much it just counters the stadium, and so it essentially can counter 2 stadiums, which is really nice for Path to the Peak because that is not so good for you. And so Eternatus VMAX, it's a good deck. I don't think it's not the most interesting deck in my opinion, but it was really solid. Then we have Calyrex and Inteleon, but do not be mistaken, this is a different Calyrex. This is Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. And this is the first of 3 Inteleon decks, and it's really solid. Rider and Inteleon VMAX Max Lance, you can discard up to 2 water energy from it. You do 120 for each energy, so that's 250. You have Ride of the High King, which is an attack, but it's the same as Oinclone EX's attack if you know that, but it's not that good. But then you add the Inteleon Engine and Melanie. Melanie accelerates a water energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon in play, and then you get to draw 3 cards. Or sorry, a water energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon V in play, which is pretty useful. And then you have a bunch of Inteleons, Drizzle and Sobble. We won't really talk about the Sobble because it's not that important. But Drizzle's ability, Shady Dealings, when you play it, you evolve one of your Pokemon and search your deck. When you evolve it, you search your deck for a trainer and put it into your hand. And Inteleon, this Inteleon, it runs 2 different Inteleons, but this one has Shady Dealings. Again, same ability, but it's twice as strong. You search for 2 trainers. So you can use this, and you can no, I was going to say we use it with Scoop Up Net. That's not in this list, but we see Reset Stamp and a variety of other trainer cards, including Path to the Peak, which was a big strength of the deck because Inteleon, it's an ability, but it doesn't have a rule box. And then Inteleon, the other one, what people generally refer to as Rapid Strike Inteleon, I guess. People also refer to Rapid Strike Inteleon VMAX as Rapid Strike Inteleon, but the Rapid Strike Inteleon single prizer, its ability quick shooting is insanely good and fun. Once during a turn, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. This was just really, really good and really, really fun because it would fix the math. 250. We looked at what Pokemon are we gonna look at? So we'll look at ADP in a minute, which has 280. And then VMAXs have like higher HP, so you do want to be able to essentially kind of one-shot them. Inteleon will fix the math. And you can attack with the single prize Inteleon, which does 120 to the active and 20 to one of your opponent's bench for 2, which is not bad. This later saw play as kind of like its own deck, sort of with this like Radiant Charizard list, but it also ran like Inteleon. It was a weird deck, but anyway, pretty fun deck here. Not my favorite, but it was an interesting one and a really solid one. Next, we come to ADP Boltrus. ADP stands for a few different things, but in this deck, it's Arceus and Dialga and Palkia GX, a tag team. And this card was really good. It's a ultimate ray attack. For Water Metal colorless, search the deck for up to 3 basic energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like, which is it's good, right? So you can use that and accelerate a bunch of energies, but on top of that, you have Alter Creation. For metal and a water, for the rest of the game, you do 30 more damage with your attacks to your opponent's active, and whenever you take a knockout on your opponent's active by damage, you take an extra prize. That's insane. So that means your main idea, you target Dedenne GX's, Crobat V's, Eldegoss V's, or anything kind of like that, and then you gust it up and attack it with the ADP, Arceus and Dialga and Palkia, and then you do 150 plus 30 is going to be 180, enough to knock out all those 2 prizes, which are now 3 prizes. But what if your opponent has something like another ADP? Well, then you can go ahead and use Zacian V. Its attack, Brave Blade, 230 from Metal. Can't attack next turn, but that's not that big of a deal. You power this up with Arceus V-Star, but you also have Metal Saucer, which accelerates a basic metal energy from your discard pile to one of your bench metal Pokemon. Same thing as Dark Patch in Standard right now and Aqua Patch. But yeah, this card is really, really good and just it powers up Zacian V. You have some other attackers as well. You have the Galarian Moltres V, which I mentioned in Eternatus VMAX. Of course, it's not used to power up Eternatus VMAX in this list, but it is used to attack. It also has ability that accelerates to itself. You can only use this once per turn, but over a few turns you can power it up with essentially for free because you don't need to manually attach, or you could accelerate, but then you go in and you do 190, but it doesn't really matter exactly how much you do because you're one-shotting a Pokemon that's weak to you. The Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. We have Galarian Zapdos V as well, which is a fighting Pokemon. Long story short, it just one-shots a fighting weak Pokemon. It's really good. And we also see Aurora Energy, a fun card. It's energy of any type. We have some techs. We have Model GX and Aegislash V. And we also have Energy Switch, which moves energy around, and it's really fun, and a card I like a lot. Also, 4 Professor's Research, 4 Cops and Boss's Orders. You just want to do what you want to do. Also, Zacian V had its own tool card that just says Zacian V does 30 more damage. Pretty good. But let's move on to the next deck, which is going to be actually let's talk about ADP Zacian for now. What is there to say about this deck? Oh wow, this is a weird list. So it's the same deck, but it focuses around Zacian V. This list actually runs Bronzong, which moves metal energy around. This wasn't the norm, right? No, here's a more normal list. But anyway, this list is really interesting. You have Bronzong to move metal energy around from your Pokemon in any way you like, but Aurora energy is also I mean, it's every type, so it's a metal energy, so you can move it around, and you can move it to your ADPs, and you can actually go turn one going second, evolve, because Bronzor just lets you do that. And then you also have a Ditto V, which like turns into other Vs, and then you have the Galarian Moltres V. You have Galarian Zapdos V. You have Vikavolt V, which item locks your opponent. We also have Zacian Amazing Rare, or Zacian Amazing Rare is the rarity, but people generally call it Zacian Amazing Rare, and it does. I mean, it's just going to one-shot any VMAX for Grass Psychic Metal, so that's kind of awkward. You need two Auroras and then the Metal, but I mean, yeah, you just kind of start one-shotting VMAXs, which is really powerful for 4 prizes. You won't technically one-shot every VMAX. You won't actually one-shot Eternatus, but you'll one-shot like Shadow Rider or Urshifu. I guess it might be here for Urshifu as well. You're going to be hitting 660 damage because they're weak to you and they're a VMAX. But let's talk about Urshifu now. There's 2 of them, but there's the Rapid Strike one, which was the better one really for most of the time. Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX with the Inteleon engine, mostly or in this list, exclusively with the Inteleon, which places damage counters. And so we have the Drizzle, the Inteleon, and then Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. And man, Pokemon is not creative, but this card was really fun. I guess it was really fun to play with. It was versatile, but it was a little annoying to play against. You have Gale Thrust. For one fighting, it does 150 if you move from the bench to the active. Otherwise, it just does 120, it just does 30, which is not so good, but you would use it. And there was the V as well, which had some usable attacks, but not great. But then you have Gmax Rapid Flow, the big attack here. Fighting Colorless. Discard all energy from this Pokemon. It does 120 to 2 your opponent's Pokemon. Same thing as Greninja EX. Essentially, it's a tiny bit different, but pretty much the same. But then you had Rapid Strike Energy, which is a water and fighting, but it's only 2 energy, so it'll be 2 of the 3 energy you need for Urshifu. Then you'll attach a third one. You had some interesting tools as well. You had Passimian and Telescopic Sight to boost your bench damage. You also had Jirachi GX, which turns off Psychic weakness, and it is weak to Psychic, so that's kind of interesting. There was Cheryl. You have that toolboxy style deck where you have a lot of different trainer options with the Drizzle. We have Reset Stamp. We have Karate Belt, which says you can like attack for cheaper if you're down on prizes, which is pretty powerful. And you just have a lot of different options here. And you have switching options, and then for like focusing on the first attack, you have Cheryl for healing, and then you have these spread options focusing on the second attack with Telescopic Sight, Passimian, Inteleon, stuff like that. But overall, a really interesting deck, and one I don't know, I'd say it was pretty defining of the era. The big 3 were in my opinion, the Urshifu deck, the Eternatus deck, and the Shadow Rider deck, which also formed a weakness triangle. Also, sorry about my voice. It's allergy season. Next, we come to Mewtwo Weavile. Let's talk about this deck. I mentioned. Oh, what is this card? Okay, there's a card called Sabrina and Bryson. This card, it's not showing up here, which is interesting. Oh, there, I can click. So Sabrina and Bryson. Well, I'll talk about that later. It's an interesting story. It's kind of a bit it's weird. It's a really weird story. But anyway, so then let's talk about Weavile GX. As I said, it's a GX, so it's a 2-prizer. It has a GX attack. I didn't. I had no idea what this GX attack did, but apparently it searches for bench Pokemon. But yeah, you have Shadow Connection, moving the darkness energy around, but you are stage 1 GX, which is interesting. So then you had this card, Red and Blue. Search your deck for a Pokemon GX that evolves from one of your Pokemon and put it onto that Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. When you play this card, so this is a tag team, so it has a secondary effect, which is interesting, meaning that you can like do something else if you pay an additional cost. The tag team GX attacks on the Pokemon had this thing, and then the tag team supporters also had this like attribute. So then you could discard 2 other cards from your hand. Also, I think all the secondary effects would discard a card or two from your hand. If you do, search your deck for up to 2 basic energy and attach them to the Pokemon you evolved in this way. So you could attach the 2 Darkness energies to Weavile GX and then move them around. You also had Mallow and Lana, which is a healing and switching supporter, and Cynthia and Caitlyn, which is a draw and recovery supporter, both of which were pretty good. But then we had Sabrina and Bryson. This card is so bizarre. Um, it's really weird. What it actually does is kind of interesting though, and it's not super weird what it does, but it's a little weird. Um, you can search the deck for up to 2 basic energy cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So you can grab 2 darkness energies, which is something. It's not that good, but it is a card. But then when you play this card, you may discard 5 other cards from your hand, which is a lot. There is some value in discarding in this list, but 5 is a lot. But then you can search for up to 3 Pokemon of different types, which is kind of interesting. So you actually get the same number of cards you discard, assume you're ignoring the supporter itself, which is really interesting. And so you would actively want Pokemon of different types. That's why we see this Water Sneasel. No, sorry, Sneasel. So you could search it out. But then you add the Dedenne GX, some Psychic Pokemon, and including the Marshadow, 2 counter Path to the Peak. But then the really weird thing about this card is it actually I don't know. I was gonna say it's a pseudo reprint or a reprint. So there's a card below in Bryson Man. There's some weird like conspiracy theories about this card, but there's a card. It's like a mill control card. And it got banned in standard, which is like so rare. It almost never happens. And this card was like good. It was certainly good, but was it broken? I mean, was it like broken, even more broken than everything else? I don't know about that. So it was banned though, and then they like replaced it with Sabrina and Bryson, which is like not the same card like at all. It's completely different. It's not. I thought it was gonna be like a nerfed version, but it's not. It's just like a completely different card. It's obviously not a control card. It's like a search card. So yeah, that was a really weird thing. But it was replaced like right before it rotated. So we had this card that was in format for like I don't remember how long, but it was only I think like a few months. So that was kind of strange. But anyway, this deck was really the only deck that ever played it. But let's get back to what the deck itself actually does. And here we have Mewtwo and Mew GX. It has a GX attack which you cannot use, but it has you cannot use in this deck, but it has an ability, only one ability, no attacks, or no regular attacks. So this is really interesting. Perfection. This Pokemon can use the attacks of any Pokemon GX or EX, um, capital EX, which we're not in format for really almost ever with Mewtwo Mew, on your bench or in your discard pile. I kind of forgot it copied bench Pokemon. That was nice because that meant like if you play Regidrago V-Star, it only copies the discard. So if you happen to start a Pokemon, it's really awkward. Mewtwo Mute, you don't have that issue, but yeah, but you still need the energy to use it. So you have a bunch of different GXs that are all darkness, and they're pretty cool. The main one here is going to be Umbreon and Darkrai GX. Oh, you do have Weavile GX, which you can copy. It's not very good though. But Umbreon and Darkrai. Oh, and all 3 are all tag teams. So Umbreon and Darkrai. Black lands 150 to the active, 60 snipe to one of your opponent's bench GX or EX. Again, EXs weren't really in format. But then you also have Dark Moon GX. For 1 darkness, your opponent can't play any trainers during the next turn, which is pretty annoying. Not as powerful as Horror House on Gengar and Mimikyu, which stopped them from playing all cards, so they can do something, but they can't boss for game, for example. But then if this Pokemon has at least 5 extra darkness energy, then your opponent's active is knocked out. So you take an instant knockout for 6 energy, but you can do that. As I said, you're accelerating energy with red and blue and Galarian Moltres V. And so over time, you can just go ahead and power up your Pokemon, which is really, um, really powerful because you take a knockout and they can't really do much next turn. You also have Dark Pulse, which does 30 for each 30 plus 30 more for each darkness energy you have in play, which can be pretty powerful. You also have Dark Union. This is a really weird GX attack that accelerates energy and Pokemon. It's weird. I don't think it was used too much in the deck though. I didn't play the deck, so maybe it was, but it's a weird attack. The one you want to use is certainly going to be Umbreon and Darkrai. You also have you have Mega Sableye Tyranitar, which if you have 10 energy attached, which I guess is all your energy, you can do 250 and then mill 15 cards in your opponent's deck. I don't think I've ever seen this attack used for like the mill 15, but it's hilarious. Because I mean that's a lot of cards to mill, right? I think there's a Charizard EX that milled like or no, Charizard GX. I don't remember how many cards it milled. I want to say it milled like 10. I wanted to say it was 15, but I don't think it's right. Yeah, it's mill 10, but this card's mill 15, which is hilarious. But it would never really happen. But then you have Greedy Crush, which does for 5 energy, 210, and GXs or EXs, but not really, that are knocked out from damage. From this attack, you take an extra prize, which is really, really cool. I guess it was kind of annoying taking extra prizes. People didn't like because ADP was like super annoying to play against. But this deck was pretty cool, and it had some versatility. But the last deck we're gonna talk about is one of my personal favorites. Is the good deck. I mean, I don't know, but it's Decidueye. We have the Inteleon engine yet again, but quite simply with Decidueye, it's like Mimikyu, Deep Forest Camo, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V and GX, which is, I mean, it's really good, right? This just walls. I mean, I think every deck we looked at was a V or GX. The highest played one that wasn't was Rapstrike Malamar at a 2% play rate, and then we come to Spiritomb, which is a single prizer. Although Spiritomb has like really low HP, like essentially it has no HP. That's kind of the whole point. It damages itself. So, and then what else was a single prizer? And of course, Dex did play some tech options, but yeah, wait, what's Inteleon? Is this Inteleon? Yeah, it's the Inteleon VMAX. Oh, Catterday. There you go. That's a blast from the past. This deck was so. It plays 32 Pokemon. Wow. Okay. Yeah, this deck is something. It plays 4 Bird Keeper, which is like a switch draw 3, 4 Roxy, which is discard 2 Pokemon, and then you draw 3 per discard and like 2 Bruno. This is just such a weird deck. And then what's Bronzong Box? I don't know. I'm getting distracted. But anyways, so that just looks like ADP. But anyways, so yeah, most of these decks were Mad Party at 32 at 0.5% play rate. I mean, this pretty much walls every deck in the game. So you have almost an auto win against every deck, which is so good. I mean, obviously it didn't win all its games because you need to get set up, and then ADP can just knock out 3 single prizers, and then you just lose, right? So you need to be playing carefully, and yeah, you just need to be careful. And get set up. You are stage 2, but it's not that hard. I mean, you have the Inteleons and Drizzles, which just search for all your pieces anyway. So it's not that bad. And this is a deck that I was a big fan of. I don't play competitive Pokemon. I think most of you know that if you follow my channel, but I did play in one pretty big tournament. It was an online tournament, but it was pretty big. In this deck, I played it. I just did super well, and it was all because I just played this deck and I had an auto win like every single game, and I just played Decidueye. Your opponent doesn't do anything. You attack like 10 times and you win. It was a really, really good deck that was fun as well, in my opinion. Although I don't know if everyone else thought that, but that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed taking a look back at older formats, and tell me if you want to see more about older formats that I'm familiar with, and or formats that I'm not as familiar with if you want me to explore those. But I'm also going to be working on a video where I talk about the history of the Pokemon TCG. It's going to take me like 100 hours. I'm like halfway through. It's it's a lot of work. It's actually my 1,000 subscriber special, which I've passed, but subscribe. So then I can also work on my another big subscriber milestone. I guess 1,500. I'll probably do something really big for that as well. But I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking and subscribing, hitting the bell, all that good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.